OBR Straight Talk, Episode 7. Ye kickers.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the latest episode, Episode 7 of OBR Straight Talk. I am Bob Evans, he is Scott Kennison, and we've done it again, Browns fans. We get to record this thing called a winning podcast. No, it didn't happen on Monday. That's my fault. I was a little bit under the weather, so I had to have Scott push it back to Wednesday. So we're recording Wednesday evening, so you're either listening to this Thursday or Friday. But Scott, good things happened in Cleveland on Sunday. No, I'm not talking about the fact that I was waiting in line to go into the Muni lot at 6:20 in the morning and drink a few beers, do a few shots, and play a little bit of flip cup with some friends before heading to the stadium. I'm talking about the Cleveland Browns getting their first Sunday victory since 2015.
And no, there is not a signpost up ahead. You have not entered the Twilight Zone. The Cleveland Browns won a football game on a Sunday. They won a football game against a division rival on a Sunday. They won a game ugly. The defense did not fold up like a cheap tent in the last waning minutes of regulation or overtime. Yes, they gave up a field goal, but the defense did not give up the game-winning drive. The defense got off the field. And even though the Zebras once again appeared to be in the pocket of the Baltimore Ravens, getting only 2 accepted penalties all game, the Cleveland Browns overcame all of that to win a football game in division. It's a good day.
It's really weird right now. I was talking to somebody and they at the gym on Monday, and he's like, he's a Rams fan. And we were having a weird conversation. He's like, man, I need you to help me out getting tickets. I think the Rams are coming to Cleveland next year, and I'm already willing to spend, I know it's going to be expensive because the Browns are good. I'm willing to spend up to $800. I'm like, what, for 4 tickets? Because he's my neighbor. Like, for you and your family? Oh, no. I mean, just for 1 ticket for me to be, like, right behind the Rams sideline. I'm like, buddy, it's not that expensive. Then it took me a second to, like, sit there, and I'm like, I'm a season ticket holder this year. And in the 3 home games that I've attended in the regular season, I have not seen a loss. And I know that's a weird transition from a guy who's a Rams fan, but when he was talking about like buying tickets, and I was just like, when I decided to get my season tickets this year and come back to the season ticket family after a few years off because I refused to have season tickets when they drafted Johnny Manziel, I got excited. Jarvis Landry, Baker Mayfield, Denzel Ward, all these additions, Demarius Randall. I'm wearing my Denzel Ward artwork shirt.
An awesome shirt. It's half Denzel as a Brown, half Denzel as a Buckeye. 12-21. That is a kick-ass Brown shirt.
So I wore this in the Muni lot into the game on Sunday because I picked it up from GV Artwork on Saturday. And every single person that saw it in the Muni lot, every single person that walked by me, they kept complimenting my shirt and like, dude, that shirt's so awesome. Where'd you get it? I'm like, go to GV Artwork, go get it. And no, they're not a sponsor of the show, but Greg, GV, if you guys want to sponsor the show, that'd be cool. But anyway, so back to the whole like coming full circle. So I was talking to my buddy at the gym, and when he was asking about tickets and ticket prices, I was just like, man, I'm really happy that I became a season ticket holder again this year. In 3 games, I haven't seen a loss yet. That's more than people can say for like, there's people that have been season ticket holders probably for 30, 40 years, and they probably can't say that for a full season that if a lot of them probably can't say that they saw, in their first 3 games, no losses of that season.
I'm going to back this up even further. Your neighbor, the Rams fan, not a Browns fan, not a Hiramite, not a delusional drinking the Kool-Aid Browns fan, said, I'm willing to pay up to $800 because I know the Browns are good. I know the Browns are good. The Browns are good. The Browns are not a bad football team anymore. At least right now, as we sit today. We said last week we're going to find out a lot about this team and what this team is in that Ravens game. You find out a lot about the character of your team when you win a game ugly. You got punched in the face to start that game a little bit. It was ugly. Baker Mayfield almost got killed. Thank you, Nick Chubb, for showing the world why you're not in there on pass plays, because you almost got Baker Mayfield killed.
Duke almost got him killed too. When I rewatched the game today, at first I thought it was Chubb on that one, but it was also Duke almost got him killed too. He guessed wrong. He took the outside guy that the left tackle was going to take, and the left tackle took that guy too, and the blitzer came right in.
But the point is, you got punched in the face. That was ugly. And then at the end, it looked like it was going to get taken away from you too, and you rallied, and you came back, and you won a game in overtime. And as crazy as this sounds to get hyped up over an ugly victory, I think it says more about your team to win a game ugly than to win a game running away. Because winning a game ugly is tough. You got to be mentally resilient. You got to keep fighting, and you've got to overcome your own mistakes. And they couldn't do that against the Raiders. And they come back a week later and they did it against a better football team. Came back and won a game against a better football team, and they won it ugly.
So I know before the show you said, what's the direction of today's podcast and what's our outline? And, I kind of just said, let's talk Ravens. Let's talk about our thoughts there. Maybe we can get Lane on a little later to have him come on and shoot some straight talk. And then we got to obviously get to the Chargers. But what I want to do first, instead of giving just my overall thoughts on the game, I'm a person that prides myself on being able to admit when I'm right, admit when I'm wrong, and give props when somebody proves me wrong. So I want to start there. First person I want to give props to for his performance in this one is Jabril Peppers. Jabril Peppers has been somebody I've scrutinized since the moment that the Cleveland Browns drafted him. And it's not contrary to what Jabril says to the media. It has nothing to do with the fact that he played for the Michigan Wolverines. It's the fact that I watched his career at Michigan and never knew what the hell he was in college and never had a clue what he could be at the NFL level. I knew he wasn't a cover safety. I knew he wasn't a corner. I always felt that eventually, and I've said it on this podcast, that eventually he'll come into the box as a box safety or even transition to linebacker at some point in his career, kind of like what Mark Barron did with the Rams with Greg Williams. So Jabril, after throwing people under the bus all week in media, which Jabril, come on, man, don't do that. Just stay out of the media calling out fans. It's not worth it. I understand it's frustrating. I understand people coming up to you at CVS, by the way, who still shops at CVS, bother you. But let's rewind here, because I want to apologize to Jabril Peppers. I mean, don't get me wrong. Special teams, he's always going to drive me crazy. And sometimes I don't understand, why he fair catches certain things and why he lets certain ones go. But I want to talk about his play on defense. Every time you looked around that defense on Sunday, Jabril Peppers was flying around the secondary making a play. He was running sideline to sideline. Honestly, in his entire career here in Cleveland, this past Sunday's game against the Ravens was the most inspired football that I have seen Jabril Peppers play. And maybe that's because he's all fired up and pissed off because fans keep calling him out, and he felt like he had a chip on his shoulder. He felt like he had something to prove. You know what? If that's what it took to light a fire under Jabril Peppers and get from him what came out on film on Sunday, I'm all for it. Now, don't get me wrong. Peppers has played better this year on defense. Ever since Greg has brought him from being 30 yards deep, brought him into the box a little bit, let him work in there. That's the type of player that we thought he could be when he came out, but he was never put in that position.
He reminds me of a more athletic version of TJ Ward. You don't want to ask him to get into coverage, but if you let him wreak some havoc up in the box as a strong safety, then he can probably be very effective.
Yeah. And that's one thing when I was watching back the game today before I came over to record, I noticed it again. I noticed it when I was in the stadium. Obviously, I was under the influence of alcohol, so I didn't get to notice it as well as I would have liked to. But today, rewatching it, it's every other play. It's Jabril's near the ball, ready to make a hit, making a big. He had a few pass breakups. He was just playing with so much authority out there, and that's what I love to see. So I have to, credit where credit's due. Jabril, I love the play, love to see it, and hope it continues for the season. The next person I have to issue an apology to is Greg Williams. I've taken Greg Williams to task all year long, and people have kind of come back at me about it because, they're like, well, the turnovers, and that's fine. But Greg Williams' defensive scheme annoys the shit out of me sometimes, and I have to vent about it. And so in this one, again, don't get me wrong, the middle of the field always being open drives me utterly crazy. I mean, teams are going to beat the Browns in the middle of the field. Teams are going to move the ball down the field by attacking the middle, getting the tight end there, getting a running back in behind, or the slot receiver. The middle of the field is always going to be open, like you said before the podcast, in the version of defense that Greg Williams plays. It's up to the defense to bend, not break down the field, and that's what we saw on Sunday. Greg Williams' defense did not break. When they got in the red zone, when the Ravens got in the red zone, Greg Williams' defense did not break. Denzel Ward had a big interception off of the tip pass, right down deep in the red zone. Denzel Ward blocked a field goal. The defense did not break. So on this Sunday, Greg Williams, I give you kudos for your guys being fired up and playing very, very good defense within your scheme and holding the Ravens to 9 points and no touchdowns.
This whole defensive scheme of Greg Williams, I'm starting to believe is predicated on two things to be successful. One is that they're going to get sacks and negative yardage plays so that they're not in 2nd and 3 and 3rd and 4 situations, because the middle of the field is always going to be open in this scheme on short yardage situations to let the offense have an easy first down. So Greg Williams is giving up 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, and he's saying, basically, we're going to be in trouble. There's going to be 5-yard plays for you all day, 8-yard plays for you all day over the middle. But he is hoping that one of two things will happen. He's going to get a sack or a negative yardage play to put you in 2nd and 15 or 3rd and 12, to the point that, the middle of the field is open, but my linebackers will recover or my guardian angel will get there fast enough to keep you from getting a first down. Or he's going to generate turnovers with this aggressive defense and take that out of play. His whole defense is predicated on that, though. So if you can run the ball effectively as a opposing offense and put yourself in 3rd and 7 or less, you've got a good chance of moving on the Browns all day long. But the other thing he's hoping is that when you get down to the red zone where the field condenses, then you don't have that advantage as much, because the linebackers don't have to drop as far and the safeties aren't as deep, and that goes away and the field congests. He's doing this, I think, so that he can gamble as aggressively as he is on the blitz. He wants to blitz a lot more than other teams. He wants to be a lot more aggressive on his coverage. If you're going to do that, you need a safety who's farther back. I've been trying to figure out what the hell the point of this defense is the whole time, and I think that's what it is. I think it's honestly there to allow him to be more aggressive on blitzes, be more aggressive on trying to create turnovers, and it's all predicated on the fact that those things are going to happen, and if they don't, when the field condenses, you've still got a good chance to get off of that field only giving up 3. And so far, it's working. I want to take Greg Williams to task because I watch the game, I tweet about it, I get frustrated as hell. I'll look there and I'll go, yep, middle of the field's wide open. All they got to do is run a drag route, and this thing is toast. The Browns have no chance. Drag route, cross route, skinny post up the middle. Browns have no chance on it. But at the same point in time, it's working. And it worked last year for the most part. The defense is not the problem last year. So as much as I want to take Greg Williams to task, I can't. With the exception of the Raiders game, this defense has played extremely, extremely well. And we'll talk about it later, though. You're coming into one of your toughest tests because Phillip Rivers is playing pretty good football right now.
So the next guy, I have to issue an apology to. I'll do this one a little quicker because he hasn't fully deserved the apology yet. Jamie Collins probably had his best game of the season, easily had his best game of the season, probably one of his better games as a member of the Cleveland Browns.
He was more than a guy on the field this Sunday.
It was weird, though, because it didn't start that way. I think it was the first or second play from scrimmage. He again took the wrong side of his blocker, and the other Browns defender, I don't know if it was Schobert or not, coming in from the other side, just absolutely got blown out of the play because he wasn't in the right spot, and and I think Collins took off for like an 8 or 9 yard run right off the rip. And I was sitting in my seat and I'm like, oh shit, here we go again. Here goes Jamie Collins, gonna have a bad day. But he actually rebounded. Now I think his tackles numbers were a little padded. Everybody keeps throwing out there, oh, Jamie Collins had 11 tackles, I think it was, and there were a few old Danny Shelton jump on piles or jump on the end of the play when the play was already decided type plays. But no, I mean, I got to give Collins a little bit. I got to give him some credit there. One guy I do want to talk to you about. So I'm done with my apologies. That's my apology section. I'm done with that now, but I do want to stay there because I think that both of us were a little bit concerned when Terrence Mitchell went down with injury. what was going to happen when the Browns secondary, who was going to be that man that stood up. TJ Carey has not played well. EJ Gaines, prior to the knee injury, struggled in preseason. EJ Gaines, since coming in, has looked fantastic. And I have to give him a lot of credit because he was a guy, when the Browns went out and drafted Denzel Ward, he was vocal and upset about the fact that he thought he was going to be a starter. And now all of a sudden you have Denzel Ward here, and Denzel Ward is coming in as a starter. Now he had to fight for a starting position, and he lost it to Terrence Mitchell. This is the type of guy who I honestly thought when cuts came out, he could have been cut. Or he could have been thrown on the PUP list or the short-term IR with the knee injury, and then they figured it out. This is a guy who, he's had ups and downs in his career. He's had a lot of injuries, has a history playing with Greg Williams, but he stayed tough. He stayed strong, even though he complained about the starting thing early on. He waited for his opportunity, and I'll tell you what, Scott, in the 2 games now that we've seen him, he's looked very good.
He was huge. Look, we talked about it last week heading in that we had concerns at cornerback. We didn't know what was going to happen. I said it makes most sense to put Brian Body Calhoun there because he can play the position. Greg Williams must have seen something in practice that led him believe that Gaines was ready for this, because TJ Carey still certainly is not, but looked in good hands with EJ Gaines. EJ Gaines answered the bell, and we see if he can answer the bell again this week. But yeah, absolutely got to issue. I agree with you. Have to issue an apology to EJ Gaines. We were pretty harsh on him last week.
Yeah. So it's good to see Gaines. Couple of other notes from the defense, since I'm just basically on that side of the ball right now. Coley, given some positive reps in the middle of that defense on the defensive line, was huge. The Browns, because of Coley, showing out, he was there on Garrett's 1 sack early on in the game. Coley's actually the one that collapsed the pocket on that, and Garrett got to come in because that's why Coley was up celebrating. He wrecked the pocket, and Garrett just followed him right in, which is what you're supposed to do on that blitz. So that was great. Loved seeing Coley there. And I gotta after last year, when Joe Schobert, I believe he ended up leading the league in tackles and made the Pro Bowl team as an alternate, and then ended up, filling in and being on the Pro Bowl team. I thought, all right, once Collins back, once Kirksey is back to, once the whole linebacking unit is back firing at all cylinders, I thought Joe Schobert would kind of take a step back. Joe Schobert, like I mentioned earlier with Jabril, when I rewatched that game today, he's everywhere. His coverage, which was one of the big question marks about him from last season, his ability in coverage, he batted down 2 or 3 passes that were huge plays. If he didn't get in there and get a hand on the ball or, play tight coverage, they could have been big gainers. Joe Schobert has played really, really well this season, and this Ravens game, every time I looked up, again, just like with Jabril, I'm looking up and there he goes 53 making a play. So this is an apology. I haven't taken Joe Schobert to task or anything, but I thought he looked really good. What did you see?
So I have a semi-apology. Look, Joe Schobert's been rock solid in the middle. The problem at linebacking core a lot of times has been Jamie Collins. And if Jamie Collins gets his head out of his ass and is where he's supposed to be, and I don't see Joe Schobert pulling a mini LeBron 2 or 3 times a day, like looking at J.R. Smith, except he's looking at Jamie Collins pointing over there, like, why weren't you there? Then that'll be a good thing. And Jamie Collins wasn't really doing that this week like he was in weeks past. I got to do a mini apology to Myles Garrett. 2 weeks ago, before they went and played the Raiders, I wondered if Myles Garrett was just speed rushing the quarterback because that's the only thing he knows how to do, a la Cameron Wembley. And I made a Cameron Wembley comparison, even though I don't never think that Myles Garrett is Cameron Wembley. Don't they wear the same number?
Yeah. No, I think Cameron 95?
I think he was.
Oh.
I think he was. But anyway,
he was 95.
Anyway, aside from that, they're not the same player. And I said that day that, no, they're not the same player. But anyway, Myles Garrett from that point on, in my observations, has gotten much better at reading run, not selling out in the blitz every single time. And he's got a ways to go. But there has been absolute improvement on him doing things other than speed rushing. Like he followed Cooley in on the 1 sack. He's also, you can see he's waiting at times. He's seeing that the play's a run. He's seeing that the play's a screen. He's getting better at that. What you expect a second-year player who had lots of time missed injury in the first year to do. That's one of the things I wanted to see Myles Garrett do in growth and development. If he continues to improve in that, and all of a sudden you've got a monster who can just walk you back into the quarterback and sack the quarterback with the left tackle if he wants to. And you got a guy who can read run. And you pair that up with a guy like Agba on the other end who's pretty good at doing that. Look out. Look out. You know, they need him to do that because that's going to be a big part of their run game is setting that edge containment.
You know, I think what happens sometimes, and I'm not saying with you, I'm just saying with fans in general and anybody who watches football, especially in this town after years and years of busts and watching poor football play, is I think we see a guy when they're drafted and we think that, all right, what he shows me in year one is going to be the player that he is. Guy like Garrett, year one, big expectations. Everybody's like, oh, he's going to be the next dominant. He's going to be the next J.J. Watt. He's going to be the next dominant pass rusher in the game. And then he was hurt. And then he really didn't have a full display of, his pass rush tools. He was, below average in run support. And everybody's like, oh, we did it again. We busted again. But we forget that these kids they're kids. Like, they're 21 years old. Yeah, they're 6'4", 270, 80-pound monsters. Like, when you walk by them in public, you're not thinking, like, you see Myles Garrett in public or at training camp, you're not like, oh, that's a kid. Like, no, that's a 6'4", 270, 280-pound man. And we forget that they're 21 years old. Like, they're not refined at their craft yet. They played it growing up in high school, but most of these guys didn't have to have technique in high school. They were bigger, stronger, faster. They pushed their way around. They ran their way around guys. Even in college at Texas A&M, Myles Garrett didn't have to be the best technician on the field because even though the SEC is quote unquote to everybody the greatest conference in football, every team doesn't have stud left tackles or right tackles that you're lining up against.
There's very few players in any given year in the NCAA who could match up against Myles Garrett.
So when we think about these players, so I don't think it's that bad. I don't really think you need to issue an apology for that. It was just getting him healthy, and seeing the commitment because Myles Garrett is a weird cat.
It's not really an apology as it is an observation that, hey, I said I wanted to see Myles Garrett get a little better at that, and guys, Myles Garrett's getting better.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's a weird cat, too. It's like he's not that type of guy who's just going to sit there and like, yeah, I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to eat, sleep, breathe football. No, Myles Garrett is talking about dinosaurs. Myles Garrett is going and taking pictures of nature around Cleveland and posting them on his Instagram on his days off. Myles Garrett's writing poetry. Myles Garrett is the opposite of the type of person that an old school football guy would be like, yeah, that's my guy. Because he doesn't, when he's in the facility and he's working and he's refining his craft, he's doing his work. But when
you're going to tell me my big monster, 6'4", 280-pound defensive end is out taking photos of nature and writing poems? Get him in there and pumping some iron. What the hell is taking pictures and writing poems going to do to help you to sack a quarterback? You can do that when you're retired. You can do that before you die. Get in there right now and pump iron. Work on your technique. You got to walk that left tackle back into the quarterback. I got to get you over here getting off and stopping the run. Hit the tackling dummy. What the hell is photography going to do to help you win football? Well-rounded life, my ass. Get in there and lift some weights.
Thank you for stopping by, football guy Scott. I appreciate that. But, so Myles Garrett is the type of person that he's a 21, 22-year-old kid. I forgot how old he is now, but he's just a guy who is a different kind of cat. Like, there's no other way that I could put it. He's just a different guy, and he has gotten better, and he's only going to continue to get better, people. Myles Garrett is young. He's growing still. He's pumping iron. He's taking his pictures of nature. He's writing poetry, becoming one with himself. And very, very soon, he's going to become one with the league lead in sacks in the season. He's going to post a 15-plus sack season. And Myles Garrett is going to continue to get even better. And we're only scratching the surface of how good this kid's going to be.
Hey, Garrett, that haiku is going to help you drop back into coverage and intercept the pass. Garrett, right. That poem in iambic pentameter is going to help you break up that screen.
All right, switching sides from the defense now. I want to go over to the offensive side of the ball, obviously, and I want to start with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, fresh off of his 2 long touchdowns on 3 carries at Oakland for over 100 yards rushing. What did we hear from fantastic Hugh Jackson this week? Nick Chubb's going to get more touches. He's shown it. He's proven it. He's earned it. That's not the exact quote, but he basically said Nick Chubb is going to get more touches. And what happened?
Nick Chubb doesn't get more touches, I'm going to jump in that lake.
Nick Chubb had 3 rushes for 2 yards, and I don't know if he ended up hauling in any passes. I know he had that one drop off his fingertips. Nick Chubb did not get more touches. Nick Chubb got either the same amount or less touches in this one. That's not going to make bench Carlos Hyde and his low yards per carry average Twitter very happy. They weren't happy after the game. They were taking him to task yet again. We'll get to Carlos Hyde in a second. I want to start with Nick Chubb. Quick observations from Nick Chubb when I rewatched the game. He struggled. His limited touches, it was his first carry, I think it was. He had, again, this is what I've talked about over and over throughout the podcast and why Nick Chubb isn't getting the ball. It went back to preseason. Nick Chubb had a nice running lane downhill, but the first feel of a defender near him, he bounced it outside like in college, and I don't know if he got back to the line of scrimmage or not, or if it was a negative run. So his very first rush, I think it was, he went right, bounced it outside, and was dropped for a loss. Then we came back, dropped a pass. He did have that one big run that was called back due to the hold. And like you mentioned earlier, Nick Chubb nearly got Baker Mayfield killed. In this moment, Scott, again, we saw why Nick Chubb is not getting 10 to 12 to 14 touches a game. It isn't because Nick Chubb doesn't have all of the explosive ability in the world and can be a game-changing running back. It's because, again, he's a young kid that isn't refined in the areas that his coaching staff need him to be. That is running downhill, putting his foot in the ground, getting between the tackles, and protecting the damn quarterback.
So you have 2 options with Nick Chubb. You can either get him 12 to 14 touches a game by only putting him in the game on obvious running downs, which people argue with me that that's what we should do, because on obvious running downs, he can still gain positive yards, which is insane. If the tape gets out that Nick Chubb is only in the game when he's going to run the ball, then his yards per carry is going to be lower than Carlos Hyde's. It's just going to happen. Unless you're Adrian Peterson, and he's not Adrian Peterson, people, you're not getting, averaging 4.5 yards a carry with 8 men in the box routinely. Or Tecmo Bowl Bo Jackson. If you're not those guys, it's not happening. So that's your one option. Your other option to get him 12 to 14 carries a game is to just understand that he's not a threat to catch the ball out of the backfield right now because he's dropping passes. So teams aren't really going to credit him with that. Or if you keep him back there in pass protection, Baker Mayfield's going to be in the concussion protocol by week 7. Because that's what's going to happen. So you have to ask yourself, Browns fans, what is more important? Baker Mayfield being your quarterback instead of Tyrod Taylor? Or Nick Chubb being your running back instead of Carlos Hyde? Because you have proven that you can win games with Carlos Hyde as your running back and Duke Johnson as your backup. You have proven that you cannot win football games without Baker Mayfield as your quarterback. And until Nick Chubb demonstrates that he can protect Baker Mayfield, he's not going to be running the ball. You're going to see him get 2 or 3 carries. And I mean, it's just that simple. You might see Nick Chubb in the game in some dual running back backfields, like out of the shotgun, where you've got, one running back next to him, and they can kind of disguise it that way so that they can get him in there for some pass protection with someone else to help him. But honestly, this is not hard. This is not rocket science. Nick Chubb is playing very poorly in every aspect of playing running back aside from running the football. And now you may say, Scott, that's like saying your quarterback's playing poorly in every aspect aside from throwing the football. But you have to do more at running back than just run the football. Because, I can't say this enough. He's going to get Baker Mayfield concussed or a broken collarbone or powerbombed like Tim Couch. It's going to happen. He nearly got Tyrod Taylor getting up saying his name is Potato, and Baker Mayfield nearly had his head rolling back towards the goal line. He's terrible in pass protection. So until he shows in practice that he can pick up the blitz properly, and then shows on game day that he can stay calm and do it, you're not going to see a lot of Nick Chubb. Hugh Jackson is not wrong on this one. Hugh Jackson is right on this one, because Baker Mayfield is far more important to you than Nick Chubb. Look, if this was Tyrod Taylor, if this was Drew Stanton, I hate to say this because you wouldn't even want to do it to Tyrod Taylor. You don't want to do it to any quarterback. That's their brain. That's their health. There's a level of trust with a player that they're competent enough to be out there. And Hugh Jackson has to look Baker Mayfield in the eye, or Tyrod Taylor, or Drew Stanton, and say, yeah, I know he can't protect your blind side, and I'm sorry you have a broken rib or a lacerated kidney, but I needed to get the kid some carries because the fans wanted it. He's got to look his players in the face, and that's not just one player, that's every player, and be able to say, man, I not only did what's best for, PR, I have your safety in mind. Football's a dangerous game. And if you're out there playing next to someone who doesn't know what they're doing and risking your health and your livelihood and your paycheck, they're not out there just kicking it. That's their job. That's their career. That's their health and their safety on the line. You better put someone in there who's ready to do everything they need to do. And I don't know how you look Baker Mayfield in the eye and say, deal with the fact that Nick Chubb may get you blindsided by a 310-pound refrigerator running a 4.4 because we want to see Nick Chubb get more carries.
Yeah, and to just build on one thing you said there, that trust with Baker Mayfield is so important right now because that kid is doing things within the pocket that the seasoned veteran elite quarterbacks in this league do. The last thing we want to do is have Baker Mayfield start developing bad habits in the pocket where he's like, all right, I got Nick defending my blind side on this one. I need to, my internal clock, I got to speed it up. I can't go through my progressions all the way. I need to run out of the pockets. Like, we don't want that to happen. We do not want bad habits. And this isn't a knock on Nick Chubb. I'm not trying to say he's some bust and like all of a sudden that's, he's never going to be anything. It's just, we've identified an issue, and it's what's keeping him off the field, and we need to work on it before getting him back in there and expecting him to protect our quarterback.
2019 is the year of Nick Chubb. It's 2019. It's probably not, maybe later in the year this year, maybe later in the year. But you know what? I know you want to get to this. Here's the thing. I don't think that with 14, 15 carries a game, he's going to be that much better than Carlos Hyde right now. Because I think most of the problem with Carlos Hyde's yards per carry average stems from either Todd Haley running him out of formations that are clearly obvious runs and don't run to his strength, or the offensive line just being fairly abysmal at consistently run blocking for him.
So sticking with the running game, because I'm only going to touch on it real quick because I touched on it last week. Friends, fellow Browns fans, writers, podcasters, fanatics, take a deep breath. Embrace Carlos Hyde as your starting running back. The Browns elevated a practice squad running back this week because of his abilities on special teams in Hilliard. And all of a sudden, my Twitter timeline was filled with, does the Browns bringing up Hilliard open the door for the Browns to trade Carlos Hyde to the Philadelphia Eagles because the Philadelphia Eagles lost Jay for the year, and Darren Sproles is old, and Corey Clement and Wendell Smallwood haven't done enough to prove that it's a Super Bowl team. People, since when is having a running back who is getting, he had 3.7 yards per carry against the Ravens. He ran hard. He hit the hole well. He gained a lot of yards after contact. Since when is having a guy like that on our team suddenly something we need to trade? Just because we have Nick Chubb waiting in the wings, who's shown us, 2 awesome touchdown rushes, and who's shown in short order, short amount of carries, because he's shown to be electric. Like, let's not run. We're finally to the point here where we have a 2-2-1 football team. We have some depth at the position. And now all of a sudden we want to just trade Carlos Hyde because he's not averaging 4.5 yards per carry. Listen, Carlos Hyde is not David Johnson. Carlos Hyde is not Todd Gurley. He's not a top 5, top 10 elite running back in the league. But he's a steady veteran who doesn't get his quarterback killed, who knows what to do when people are collapsing around him. Instead of bouncing it outside, he falls forward, gets a couple of yards. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He can pass protect if called upon. He is a steady veteran who doesn't have a ton of tread on his tires because of the injuries he suffered in San Francisco. Yes, he's a Buckeye, but that's neither here nor there. Nobody's giving Carlos Hyde a pass here. But let's not run him out of town because he's not averaging 4.5 yards per carry. He's doing what you need him to do. And I believe coming into Sunday, he was the league leader in touchdown rushes.
He has 5 rushing touchdowns. But let's go through some things here. He's also a freaking workhorse right now. 22 carries for 62 yards against the Steelers. 16 carries for 43 yards against New Orleans. Boy, that was the turd in the punch bowl. 22 carries for 98 yards against the Jets. 2 touchdowns. That was his best game so far. 4.3 yards a carry. 22 for 82 against Oakland. That's a pretty good game. That's a pretty good game with 1 rushing touchdown. 17 for 63 against the Ravens, which is a good rushing defense. It's not a bad defense. 63 yards, 3.7 yards a carry. Listen, we'd have killed for this in our running backs a few years ago. He has 348 yards now through 5 games. Ladies and gentlemen, he is on pace to rush for about 1,100 yards. You got a guy who's on pace for a 1,000-yard rusher. When's the last time we had that? Jamal Lewis?
Yeah. It was Drones after him?
Yeah, and then we had Drones and
Hillis.
Hilton.
Did Hillis get 1,000?
I think Hillis did. It's been, what I'm saying is they're few and far between. Carlos Hyde is by no means lighting the league on fire. But he is by no means, some of the crap that we've had here. This isn't Travis Prentice 2.0.
Here, just to jump in real quick, because I just looked it up. He's number 2 in the NFL in rushes. Only Todd Gurley at 101 has more rushes than him this year.
He's a workhorse. He's holding up to that workload. He's largely protecting the football. He hasn't fumbled the ball, has he?
I can't think of a time he's fumbled.
I mean, he's protecting the football. I don't see that stat. I thought I saw it, but no. Look, he's protecting the football. And when they rush to his strengths with some off-tackle, zone blocking schemes, and some draws and some delays, and they're out of 3 wide receiver sets, when they do some of that stuff, he's running the ball very effectively.
It says he has 1 fumble, but it wasn't lost, so he must have fallen back on top of it. When they use him to his strengths, he's running the ball effectively. And you can't ask for a whole ton more out of Carlos Hyde than that. Look, if you want an elite running back, I'm sorry, he's not an elite running back. I don't know if Duke Johnson is either. And I don't know if Nick Chubb is either. Here's the bottom line. Carlos Hyde is getting the job done. You have an effective running game that you can count on to get you some yardage, and it's taking some of the pressure off Baker Mayfield, and it's getting better. If you strip out the first 2 games at 2.8 and 2.7, and you look at some of the adjustments that have been made, he's averaging close to 4 yards a carry since then, probably like 3.9. He's trending in the right direction. He has 5 touchdowns. Carlos Hyde is the least of your worries on offense. I'd be far more worried about the fact that David Njoku looks a lot like Greg Little right now. I'd be far more worried about that. I would be far more worried about Antonio Callaway seemingly making a lot of the mental errors, lapsing concentration. I forgot that it's Sunday errors. I'd be far more concerned about your offensive coordinator running a double reverse in overtime from the 10-yard line. With Rod Streeter.
That's almost like Pat Shurmur with the backup fullback or third-string tight end getting a goal line carry. Okay? I mean, I'd be far more worried about these things. I'd be far more worried about the fact that right now, the only wide receiver that you can truly rely upon, who's on the roster and healthy, is Landry.
Yep. Higgins has been emerging.
But he's injured.
And now he's got the sprained MCL.
Right. David Njoku has a problem catching the football. As Lane tweeted, don't hit 85 in the hands. Don't hit 85 in the hands. It's a big problem with him. There's much bigger problems at right tackle than Carlos Hyde. The whole offensive line is a bigger problem than Carlos Hyde.
Hubbard's been really bad.
You have a lot of problems. You have problems on the offense. And Carlos Hyde is not one of those problems. It's like all those years before the last year in Cleveland when people would just rip on Joe Hayden. You had a lot of problems on defense in those years. And somehow you focused it all on Joe Hayden in 2013. I don't get it. Maybe it's because you expected more out of Carlos Hyde. I expected a little more out of Carlos Hyde. But he is playing at an NFL competent level. Dare I say a slightly above average NFL level, possibly as your running back right now. There's a lot of teams that would be happy to be getting what Browns are getting out of Carlos Hyde. It's effective. I don't understand this. Maybe you want Ohio State, Columbus, Carlos Hyde. But I'm sorry, no one's averaging 6.2 yards a carry in the NFL.
So, I think we've talked a ton about this game. So right now, before we kind of put the bow on the Browns-Ravens, let's just go with one random thought from the game. One thing that you saw from the game that was your big takeaway or something that you thought was great. I'll go first because I'm kind of putting you on the spot so you can think. I loved seeing Duke Johnson getting some carries there, especially on that final drive where after the Willis catch. I love seeing Duke Johnson in there, and I love seeing that he responded positively. Because the one thing I've noticed with Duke Johnson this year is his head's kind of hanging when he's out there. And I even noticed it after his first rush in that overtime drive, in that final overtime drive when they kicked the field goal to win it. I noticed that when he popped up, his head was still kind of hanging like, yeah, guys, I told you I can do this stuff. I need the ball more. Then they gave it right back to him, and he ran with power. And then he ran again with power. And he was kind of your closer in that one, which is really weird because you had your big brooding Carlos Hyde on the sideline and you went with your scat back, so to speak. I know a lot of people refer to him as that. I know he's the all-time leading rusher at Miami. But your your scat back kind of was your closer. So I really loved, and I'm choking here for some reason. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry about that. And I really loved seeing him out there, seeing him run with power, and not just going out there and giving, a so-so effort because he's mad he's not getting the ball. Now, with that said, we need more Duke. Everybody wants to say we need more Chubb. I need more Duke. And it doesn't have to be as a runner. Our very own Jake Burns dropped a free film breakdown today of how Duke can be the answer to those wide receiver problems that you were talking about over on OBR. So even if you're not a subscriber, go check it out because it's a really great article, a great breakdown of all the times Duke's been used as a pure receiver. So I need to see more Duke. Like this week, he had 6 touches. He had 5 rushes and 1 reception. With Higgins going down, Njoku's hands, of bringing back bad memories of Greg Little and Braylon Edwards. Right now, like you said, the only person that we have healthy that we can rely on is Jarvis Landry. They have not, as of the recording of this podcast, signed Rishard Matthews, even though, according to our very own Lane Atkins, the conversation and the meeting and everything went really well. But as of right now, so you can count Rishard out for Sunday against the Chargers. Right now, you have Landry, you have Callaway, as you mentioned. You don't have anybody you can trust. You can trust Duke Johnson as a pass catcher. So I need Duke Johnson to be more heavily involved in the offense, but I wanted to say that was really great to see him coming through in the clutch in this one.
So it's not a random thought, but it's the only thought that I just kept coming back to as I watched this game over and over and over again. And I kind of led with it. But this whole team, in years past, this was one of those games that you knew the Browns weren't going to get up and make the attitude plays that had to be made to come back and win this game, to not lose this game, to not give this game away. And there's a different mentality about this team. And I think what you're starting to see is a young team doing that mythical learning how to win that we've been talking about for years. And it starts with Baker Mayfield on offense. It starts with Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett on defense. We haven't talked at all about Denzel Ward, and that's kind of a travesty, but that's probably because it's just the obvious thing. But you got Denzel Ward blocking a kick, and that was huge. Your special teams made an impact play that was positive for you. Denzel Ward picking a ball off. Denzel Ward breaking up passes. The guy was everywhere when you needed him, doing his Revis Island impression. The guy is locking down half a field. But more than that, when the game was slipping away, he got up and made plays to make sure it didn't. And other guys on this defense got up to make plays to make sure that it didn't. It got to that point where you saw Mr. Momentum changing address. And individual people on this team said, hell no, not this week, not this time. This isn't Groundhog Day. We're rewriting the ending of this story. And on offense, that guy was Baker Mayfield. Baker doesn't scare. Baker doesn't get rattled. Baker doesn't care how bad the first 3 quarters have gone. All he knows is I have the football in my hands and I have a chance to make a play. Todd Haley tries to sabotage the game with a reverse from the 12-yard line. It goes for a loss. Baker Mayfield just goes out and starts making plays. He ran for a first down that got called back. And I mean, The kid is out there just saying, I don't care how bad this is going, I'm going to make the play to turn this momentum. In years past, the Browns needed everything going their way. And when that momentum turned, nobody stepped up to make that play to turn the momentum back in their direction. And so if I had an observation of this game, it felt different. As much as I was joking around with my dad and my brother on text as to how are the Browns going to find a way to lose this game, it always felt different. It's felt different all year. When Baker came in to play the Jets, I said, you know what? If the defense locks them down, Baker's going to score enough points to win this game. I never thought they were going to lose the Raiders game. It's just felt different. And a lot of that is the attitude of these individual players. And, you know, the alternate title to this episode was almost There's Something Happening Here. And I almost led with that song until, you know, it doesn't make sense because it's a Vietnam War song in the end. But there's something happening here with the Browns. And you're watching a young team come of age. And I think that's my random thought. I'm watching these young kids, this team, learn how to go about their business and how to not make the mistakes that these teams in years past have made late in the game to allow them to lose football games.
But we don't have to talk about it losing a football game right now because we won.
That's what I'm saying. We get to talk about a team that's learning how to win and not do that.
That's a great feeling, right?
It really is.
All right, everyone, for the 17th attempted time, we have him on the line. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the godfather of OBR Straight Talk. And Scott is not shrugging at me now, so I guess that we can continue with this interview. Lane Adkins, welcome to this week's podcast. And guess what, Lane? We get to celebrate a victory again. Let's just dive right into it. How you doing tonight?
Everything is good. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing well. It only took us 17 attempted times to bring you in due to Scott's problems on his computer. So no, I'm happy that we actually get to continue the interview now.
I have one job, and it's certainly not to talk sports, and I have been not doing it very well the last 2 weeks, apparently.
Oh man. So Lane, we got a victory. That's exciting. What are your initial thoughts on the Browns-Ravens game?
Well, if you pay attention to social media, a victory isn't a victory. I mean, everybody wants to complain about Carlos Hyde averaging 3.5 yards, or Baker Mayfield taking a few sacks, or, you know, Myles Garrett not getting, 4 sacks, and Jarvis Landry not hauling in 12 balls for 250 yards. I mean, besides that, man, it was a good week.
Wow. So let's start with Baker. Obviously, he didn't throw 72 touchdowns, huck and chuck a football over a mountain, but he did lead the Browns to his second win. And yes, I'm giving him credit for the Jets game, even though he didn't start. Some certain Shannon Sharps out there who think that he shouldn't get credit for that win. What did you think about Baker in this one? Obviously, he didn't put up eye-popping numbers, but he did end up with, 342 yards against one of the top passing defenses in the league.
Well, we can say he didn't put up eye-popping numbers, but considering what he was up against, I mean, he went, 25 of 43 for 342, a pick and a touchdown. And the way he brought this team back and kept them in the game, the thing with Baker Mayfield is that he's not doing this with an all-star cast around him. I mean, you got Carlos Hyde as your running back, which everybody wants to bitch about. I mean, Jarvis Landry's your one who, isn't an earth burner. He's not Josh Gordon, and he's just getting it done. And you just have to look at this guy and just say that he has the it factor. And if it wasn't for him, this team's probably 0-5.
No, probably. I think it's a guarantee. Lane, you brought it up. You said that you got Browns Twitter acting like this is a loss, and it just made me think about the dichotomy in this town. Okay, so you have Ohio State wins ugly against Penn State in a game they should have lost. Ohio State wins ugly for them against Indiana. And if you speak negatively about that, people will go, hey, they won the game, didn't they? Now, that's the team you should be critically analyzing and saying, does that performance hold up to potentially playing Alabama in the college football playoffs? But if you try to do that, you're a hater who can't just enjoy good football. The Browns, who won one game in 2 seasons, win a game, are 2-2-1, and if you enjoy that, You're an idiot who should be critically dissecting it down to Carlos Hyde's yards per carry and the fact that Baker Mayfield threw an interception and took a couple sacks. To the point that I had someone arguing with me that I should be ripping on Baker Mayfield as much as I was ripping on DeShone Kizer last year.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at it this way. I mean, yes, is it somewhat troubling and something that could be a problem down the road here, with this team running the football? Yes, they rush the football. A lot of yardage, a lot of yards per carry. But they're real close to the top and leading the league in, 0 and 1 yard carries too. So, it could be problematic at some point. The only problem is that they're finding ways to get past that. And you got a quarterback he's just so damn resourceful. This kid just gets it. They don't give up. And you have to let this whole thing evolve, and that's where it's going.
I think that a lot of the fans want to win now. And it's been so long since the Browns have won. They want this to be 2007, or they want it to be that 2014 season that doesn't get wrecked by Johnny Football polluting the locker room and being forced to play by the owner. They want this to be that magical season, and maybe it is, and you're looking for it. But at the same time, I think we need to step back and enjoy the fact that this is a young team going in the right direction. Good times are ahead. You've got a dynamic playmaking quarterback. And despite a pretty average at best play by your offensive line at times, your running game is finding ways to if not be effective, at least not be horrifically abysmal.
All right, no, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, you step back and look at it. Baker Mayfield was a guy that they didn't even intend on playing this early. I mean, you draft him, you go in the OTAs, you go in the rookie camp, and you got your CEO head coach waving the flag saying, he's not playing, this guy's not doing this guy's not doing that. There wasn't a competition in training camp, because if it was, he probably would have won the damn job there. But besides all that BS, there's an energy with this team. There's an ability to make plays that this team lacked until he got on the field. And, you have to utilize the skilled and the talented guys around you. I mean, Rashard Higgins had done very little in 2 years. Baker Mayfield's under center. Suddenly Rashard Higgins is, caught 16 balls, targeted 22 times, and averaging 15 yards a catch. Come on. Where was that?
It's amazing when you don't have Commander Cody and DeShone, the human turnover machine Kizer, throwing the football to you. What happens?
Right. I mean, you have a guy under center who gets it. He sees it. Let's not sit there and listen to the bullshit that come out of Baltimore. Well, yeah, he stared down receivers. If he stared down receivers and he puts 3-4 on you, you guys have a real problem.
So I wanted to go back to something, because you mentioned the offensive line there, Lane. And one of our OBR subscriber questions for the podcast this week from our good friend Tochigi, I think his name is. He comments on everything and is always asking questions in ATI. And he wanted to know, is there a better explanation as to why our right tackle is struggling? And how close is Greg Robinson to seeing the field as his replacement? I felt like that was a good question to ask you, because obviously you've made some comments on the offensive line as we've had you on. And obviously, if you've heard anything about the Greg Williams part around the building.
Well, let's put it this way. Both of your tackles had their struggles against the Ravens. Once Baltimore started getting physical coming off the edge, they were able to push back both of the offensive tackles. And we've seen that throughout 5 games so far this year. That's an issue here, that these guys their base they're not strong enough in their base. I mean, they can handle the quicker guys that are physical bull rush. They have their struggles. I don't see anything with Greg Robinson happening anytime soon. Really, there's a reason why he's floated around and had his issues. It's really gonna come down to them getting a comfort level in the offense, and Baker getting the ball out. He gets the ball out quickly, but there's times he holds the ball, he waits to the last second to make a play. He has to help his offensive linemen, especially his tackles, just like they have helped him. Right now, it's a situation where there's just not an availability that you're going to go out and get a stud left tackle. You're going to get a right tackle. You go with what you got. You build develop it, and you get to the end of the year, and if you got to make change, you make change, because for right now, this is what you got.
No, that makes complete sense. I want to go another direction here, away from the offensive line real quick, but stay on the offensive side of the ball. I made a comment earlier in the podcast about Duke Johnson, and it was mainly because I was really happy to see him in there on that last drive in overtime and seeing him produce as a running back. Now, I know Jake wrote the article today over on the OBR about why he can be the answer to the receiving, the issues that we have at receiver with Higgins going down with an injury and Callaway, not being there. But what are your thoughts on Duke as a running back on that last drive, and then Duke moving forward, maybe getting more touches and being more of a part of this offense as a receiver?
I've been a proponent of Duke Johnson flanking out and being a receiver for the last 2 years, and I continue to feel that way. I think he has the potential to be a dynamic type of guy that can help you in various ways that can cause matchup problems. He's reliable, holds on to the football. He actually runs pretty damn good routes, and we will see some more of him at wide receiver with the Higgins injury. But you have to like what he did in the overtime running the football is something that he has shown that he's been able to do since he's been here. He's able to get tough yardage, get tough yards that you don't expect. He's not the biggest guy, but he's shifty. He's quick. He can make himself small and make things happen. The only thing that you have to worry about with Duke Johnson is durability, and he will put the ball on the turf. And that's an issue that you have to be concerned about. And you're looking at it, I mean, he's ran the ball 17 times in 5 games. And he's caught, 10 passes in 5 games. And you just re-signed this guy to a pretty damn good contract, and he's a talent. You've got to utilize him, and I think the best thing they can do is get him more involved in the passing game to give Baker and this offense another option.
I'd agree with you on that, because ultimately, even though I said in this podcast 2019 is the year of Nick Chubb, ultimately you're going to be giving some of those carries that Duke Johnson would be getting to Nick Chubb. And that assumes that they're going to still keep Carlos Hyde as the bellwether workhorse running back, because as you said, Duke Johnson has some durability issues. You got to use Duke, and it might be as your 3rd or 4th wide receiver going forward. You might Eric Metcalf him. If my memory serves right, going back, dusting off that Browns fan resume, Eric Metcalf spent the last half of his career as a wide receiver. Did he not?
Yep.
Made that conversion. And I
feel
an
awful lot of receiver.
Like Duke Johnson is capable as a running back, but I agree with you. There's going to be durability questions throughout his entire career. And for the Cleveland Browns and the talent that you have and where that talent is and isn't, because at wide receiver right now, aside from Landry and Higgins, I don't know what you have there. It might make the most sense to look to move Duke Johnson to your 3rd wide receiver when Higgins is back. Well, sure, you're going to see more in the Njoku. And you get down to the point where you have to. He's another guy. He's a real talent. Only problem is that he just has lapses and drops the ball. Derek Willis comes in there and he lights it up last week against the Ravens. A guy who played really well in camp, as well as Damon Ratley. It was good to see him get on the field, show who he is. Well, you get down to it, you got Antonio Callaway, who's a rookie, who's had his struggles. He's dropped passes, just really slow starts. You keep force feeding him, and you have to continue to force feed a guy like that. But you have a guy like Duke Johnson sitting there, very capable to help take some of the pressure off the situation. And I think it's something that Todd Haley is going to go further with. And if he doesn't, I think it's just a gross mismanagement on the offensive side of the ball. I want to follow up on that. The Browns right now you might say you're in win now mode, but let's say the Browns win another game here. They beat the Chargers, they win 2 games, and all of a sudden they're 4-2-1. And you're playing for win now playoffs now. If you're playing to win a game now and you decide you're playing for a playoff run this year, and I'm getting way ahead, the cart is way ahead of the horse. But let's say that happens. is David Njoku really the guy you start at tight end, or do you bring Seth in to get those reps at tight end to give your team the best chance to win? Do you keep Antonio Callaway in as your second/third wide receiver, or does he have to go down the depth chart? Because right now I'm watching those two guys kill drives with untimely drops and boneheaded plays. And I think if you're developing for the future, you let those guys get reps. But if you're trying to win now, I think there's guys behind them on the depth chart that give you a better chance to win right now.
I believe they position themselves to be in a hunt, a legitimate hunt. You'll see some subtle change if we don't see guys like Callaway, Njoku hold on to the ball and do what they have to do. You mentioned Seth the Valve, who, he's an excellent receiving tight end. The only problem is that you got to keep him on the field. And that's been an issue, keeping this guy healthy. I mean, Darren Fells at tight end, he can do some nice things. He can block a bit. He can make catches here and there. But when you get down to the tight end position, especially with a guy like Njoku, you can use him as a tight end. He gets down the seam. You can flank him out. He can do a lot of things. But the only problem is that you got to hold on to the damn football. And just elaborate on what you said. There's only so many drives you get in a game, and when you see guys dropping passes, it's a killer, and it kills morale, it kills momentum, it makes people press. You have to get past it, and hopefully these early games, getting these guys the experience, the reps, getting the ball in their face is going to help them as we get towards the second half of the season.
All right, Lane, switching gears to the other side of the ball. One of our favorite subscribers over on the OBR, Ram Love, or Lav, or whatever it is, or it's Ramloff. I don't know. I never know what it is. He wants to
just say Ram.
Just say Ram. Ram would like to know about the state of the backup defensive lineman. Did we see anything more out of, Price this week? I saw Coley, who was starting, but I saw Coley have some flashes myself. So he wants to know your thoughts on the backup defensive lineman, and also, how is Chad Thomas doing?
Well, let's put it this way. I think that the Browns defensive line outside of Larry O and Myles Garrett are a bunch of guys. Emmanuel Agba, he plays the run well. He doesn't generate much pressure. He can seal the, and that's fine. But when you get past these guys, Chris Smith flashes here and there. Is not a guy who's going to go out there and play 60 plays and at a high level. Things are going to happen. As far as the other guys, Coley, these are just guys. They're not special. They don't really change the complexion. I mean, this team could really use a stud 3T, and I think that we're going to see them address that issue coming next year. But, guys like Carl Davis, Coley, they're just another guy, and it's something that this team will have to look at going forward to increase the quality depth that they have here.
So what about the music producer, Mr. Chad Thomas? How is he doing, our third-round draft pick, who has been pretty MIA all year long?
Well, you got people that beat the drum for him because he flashes here and there against a fourth-string team. He's done very little. He's not looked very good when he's had the opportunity in the regular season when you're playing against the big boys. Pretty nondescript. Nothing to get excited about. I think he has a lot of work to do. He's going to have an off season where he is dedicated to, improving his strength, improving his ability, his hand fighting, things like that. He just gets stood up, moved away, and you're not getting anything out of him, and that's an issue. If you draft a guy that high, you expect something. I mean, the thing can be said of Corbett drafting this guy in the top of the second round as they did, but they knew that they didn't have to depend on him today. They're looking at him down the road. He could play if he needed to today. You can't say the same thing with Thomas because he's shown absolutely nothing, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. He needs a lot of work.
Yeah. When I watched this film, and I just a quick add, when I watched this film back in college, he always just seemed to me like a run guy, like a run stopper. And, I think Jake said it in one of his articles when I was editing them. We drafted a run stopper in the NFL in 2018 in the third round. Like, it just didn't make sense to him as for a defensive end, essentially, to go in that. I was the same way when I was watching the film. But switching over, last thing about this game, and then we'll get to your prediction for the Browns and the Chargers this Sunday, and then get you out of here, because we probably had you for close to 30 minutes. EJ Gaines. So on the last podcast, just like Scott and I, you were very concerned about the future state of the secondary after losing Mitchell. EJ Gaines has looked good. What are your thoughts on Gaines, and do we maybe have not as much concern in the secondary as we at first thought we did?
You're going to need to see it more than 1 week. EJ Gaines is a guy who can play at a high level. He can act, and he can play at a low level, and he can become an injury factor. Yet you have to see it more than one game. He played a hell of a game against Baltimore. He was physical at the point. He did everything he needed to do. The only problem is that we need to see it more than 1 week, and there's going to be challenges against the San Diego Chargers and Phillip Rivers that not necessarily been the same challenges that he had against Joe Flacco and the Baltimore Ravens receiver. San Diego is a different animal. I mean, you can look at points per game, and Baltimore was scoring. San Diego is just a different animal. It's going to be a tough game, and he's going to be challenged, and we're going to find out more about EJ Gaines on Sunday. And hopefully he continues that upward trend that he showed against Baltimore. I think he has the potential and the ability to do so, but I also have reservations because we have seen him where he has not played well also. So let's see if he has the consistency to carry over.
All right. Last question. Browns-Chargers. Prediction. Who you got, Lane?
27-17 San Diego.
So the Chargers are going way under their defensive points per game there. I like it.
Yep.
I don't like it, but I like you're very, very strong in the prediction. You're just like 27-17. That's what we got. All right, Lane. Well, we'll let you get.
I've been going back and forth playing with some numbers and some statistical stuff here, and I just keep coming back to that same type of spread. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting game. The Browns play to their potential. I think it's going to be a much better game than that. You got to shut down Phillip Rivers. Cleveland has had San Diego's numbers. They've played them tough year in, year out. Maybe Greg Williams' defense is going to blitz 99.5% of the time, can get to him and change the complexion. We'll soon find out.
As always, Lane, thank you so much for joining us. I know we had you for about 30 minutes tonight. I know the subscribers and the listeners out there are going to be really pumped about that because it means that they have to hear Scott and I talk less. So thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate it. And until next time.
All good.
Big thank you again to the godfather of OBR Straight Talk, Lane Atkins, for joining us. And Scott, he left us with a pretty grim prediction. Well, it was kind of grim, but it wasn't. I mean, he said that his prediction is the Chargers 27, Browns 17. But he also said, with the Browns playing the way they are, and they've historically played the Chargers well, that, we could see possibly a win in this one. So let's just dive right into Browns versus Chargers. I want to put one thing out there because I kind of joked with Lane about it when he said the Browns were only going to score 17 points. And this is where I want to start. The Chargers defense is giving up 26 points per game this year. They're 3-2, but they're giving up 26 points per game. Reason for that, they lost one of their top corners, Jason Verrett. He's on the IR. Joey Bosa, Buckeyes fans, is going to miss this one, and they're not anticipating having him back until week 8 or week 9. So they are not, clicking on all cylinders when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. And I know when the bulk of our conversation here is probably going to center around Phillip Rivers and our expectations of what he's going to do as being one of the, top quarterbacks against blitzes for a while, and how he's going to rip to shred Greg Williams' defense, so on and so forth, whatever. But I want to focus on the defensive side of the ball for a second, because I think that this is the opportunity to be that. I don't want to call it a coming out party, because Mayfield, he's gotten 2 wins, and he had a decent size, pretty good game against the Raiders, even though in the loss minus the turnovers. So Mayfield's had very good games so far, but I think that this Chargers game has the opportunity to be a sneaky coming out party for Baker Mayfield. Reason being, you're going against a not very good defense. They're 16th versus the pass, 20th versus the run, giving up 26 points per game, missing one of their top corners, missing their top pass rusher. They're beat up. I believe that two of their linebackers did not participate in practice today. Jatavis Brown, who was from one of either Kent or Akron, and then I believe their 4th round pick or 3rd round pick from this year, he missed practice as well. So this game is building up with the opportunity for a whole lot of fun for the Browns offense. What are your thoughts there, Scott? Mayfield, versus the kind of powder puff Chargers defense right now.
The Chargers are 3-2, but I don't understand really how they're completely 3-2 because I don't think they're as good as that record indicates. I'm looking at this offense. I'm looking at this team. Well, I want to tell you Baker Mayfield should be able to tear the Chargers apart. They're giving up, as you said, 26 points a game. I want to tell you that. The problem is I don't know what his wide receiving core is going to do. If Antonio Callaway is catching passes and not falling down, if David Njoku isn't dropping 30% of his targets, if that stuff's happening and it allows Jarvis Landry not to be drawing double teams on every single play, then yes, I agree with you. I got a text message from Lane where he edited his score and said he should have said 27-24 Chargers win because he thinks they're going to score more than 17. He said, it's his edit on his score. I think the Browns are going to score a lot of points. I think the Browns are going to put up something like 30, 35 points. And it's so weird for me to say that. They just only scored 12. But I think this is one of those games where this offense roars and it makes a lot of plays. The problem is I think it's going to have to make a lot of plays.
So to build off of that, because I know you said that you don't understand how they're 3-2 and you don't think they're as good as that. Well, let's take a look at their schedule this year. Open the season with a 38-28 loss to the Chiefs. Then they beat the Bills 31-20. Then they lost to the Rams 35-23. Then they beat the Niners 29-27, and I think that game was either the game that Jimmy Garoppolo went out with the ACL injury or the first game after Garoppolo was out with the ACL injury. And then this past week, they beat the Raiders 26-10. So you have a team whose 3 victories are against the Bills, the Niners, and the Raiders. Bills and the Niners are not good football teams right now. The Raiders really aren't that good of a football team either. And I know a lot of people are going to be, well, the Raiders beat us, that type of person. But, that was the ref game and that was the big shootout game.
The Browns beat themselves in that game too.
Exactly. So, when I look at the Chargers and who they've played, they lost to the 2 teams they should lose to, who are the 2 undefeated. The Chiefs finally lost. But did the Chiefs lose or no, they're still undefeated.
No,
they're 5-0 and the Rams are 5-0. So the 2 teams that are on that collision course of being undefeated. And then 3 teams that they beat are just teams. Like they didn't. It's not like the Browns have a signature win against the Ravens last week. The Browns have a signature quote unquote tie against the Steelers. The Browns could have beaten the New Orleans Saints. I feel the Browns have played better quality of football than the Los Angeles Chargers, because I'm pretty sure I called them the San Diego Chargers at least 3 times. The Los Angeles Chargers to this point.
It's like next year we'll call the Las Vegas Raiders the Oakland Raiders, and they're are they the Los Angeles Raiders this year? Or are they still Oakland?
I think they're still Oakland.
I can't even tell what that team is at this point.
Yeah, I think it's the two LA teams are the Rams and the Chargers.
Right, which means then the Raiders are still in Oakland until they move to Las Vegas.
Yes,
and people start dying of heat stroke in September games in Vegas.
That stadium looks ridiculous, though. We did drive by the area where it's being built, and when I was out in Vegas a couple weeks ago, and then they had a big a blow up of it, of what it's going to look like on a poster board. It's going to be insane. It's true Vegas stadium. So back to this Browns Chargers game. I really think the Browns have that opportunity on offense, and honestly, the more I've looked into it, this game has a potential to be a big one for Carlos Hyde. You're talking about a team that is 20th versus the run. If anybody out there is, a DVOA person on Football Outsiders, they're one of the lower ranked teams versus the run, but they're also atrocious against teams' top receivers. So where we've been talking about how the Browns, they lost Higgins and Callaway hasn't stood up and done anything, and how Jarvis, like Lane said, everybody on Twitter is like, Jarvis doesn't have 250 yards receiving in a game yet. This game schemes very, very well when you look at the first 5 games for the Chargers to have that opportunity for the Browns offense to finally have that moment, that coming out party for Baker Mayfield, but also that moment for a guy like Antonio Callaway to break a big one and maybe get a confidence booster in this game. Switching over to what is going to be the fun element of the game, and I say fun in that disdain voice of mine, is Phillip Rivers versus Greg Williams and the Browns defense. And the reason being, and it's like that, and I'm always going to screw it up because you're more of the you're the comic book guy. What is that whole thing? The immovable object versus
the immovable object versus the irresistible force.
There you go. So you have Phillip Rivers, who is going to go down. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. One of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league for over a period of time in like the last 15 or so years since he came in the league.
He's going to be the best quarterback to never win a Super Bowl of his generation.
Yes.
Dan Marino of his generation.
I was playing that in my head on the way over here, but I felt like if I said that, somebody's going to yell at me on Twitter, so I'm glad you said it.
They can yell at me. Look, he's not Dan Marino, by the way. Dan Marino is in the conversation of the 3 greatest quarterbacks of all time. Phillip Rivers is not. But of his generation, he's the greatest to never win it. The Fran Tarkington of his generation. You like that one better, old timers?
That'll work. So the reason that I made that comic book reference that I needed you to fix for me is you have Greg Williams' swarming, blitzing defense that's all about creating turnovers and giving up the middle of the field. And you've got a guy who is one of the top blitz beaters, so to speak, at the quarterback position. I forget the exact number, but it was from like NFL Stats. They tweeted it at the OBR Twitter account yesterday, I think it was. But he has something ridiculous like 105 or 110 rating against blitzes this year. Like, that's ridiculous. And to me, and to go back to, my point earlier, to me, that scares the living shit out of me, especially with how often the middle of the field is open. And we're going up against, yes, it's Antonio Gates, but it's still Antonio Gates. Keenan Allen, who is one of the best receivers in the league. Guys like Mike Williams, Tyrell Williams. I think I don't think Travis Benjamin's playing in this one. I think he was out of practice today. I don't know if he's been officially ruled out, but he did not participate in practice. So, the Chargers, and I'm not even getting to Melvin Gordon, one of the top running backs in the league. Austin Eckler, another running back who has been very dangerous as part of that out of the backfield type of deal, and what the Browns have been traditionally beat on, those running backs sneaking out of the backfield. So you have a guy like Rivers who is great against blitzes, and you got a team that does really great getting out of the backfield and into the middle of the field. It scares the living shit out of me.
So I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe I'm just too stupid to be scared. But I'm not scared of Phillip Rivers beating the Browns in this game. I actually trust Denzel Ward to go handle Keenan Allen. This may sound insane, but this is a drop in class as compared to guys that Denzel Ward has held his own against very well. Keenan Allen is a good receiver. He is not Antonio Brown, and he is not Michael Thomas. And Denzel Ward held his own against those guys, more than held his own against those guys. And now he's got 5 games of experience in at the NFL level. I trust Denzel Ward to lock down that half of the field and just have him shadow Keenan Allen. Mike Williams doesn't scare me. Out of the Chargers next, Mike Williams is their 3rd leading receiver. After that, you've got Melvin Gordon and you've got Austin Eckler. So you're getting into your running backs. Antonio Gates is questionable with osteoporosis. Okay? And arthritis. He's questionable with both of those things. So Antonio Gates really doesn't frighten me. I think he was playing in the league during Joe Montana's last couple of seasons. Maybe I should be. He's still Antonio Gates. But I feel like if the Browns can't cover Antonio Gates, they're not going to cover any tight end in the league at this point because Antonio Gates is ancient. Like, I just... If you can't cover Antonio Gates at this point, you let Antonio Gates beat you. Shame, shame, shame. And that should be the death knell of the Greg Williams give up the middle defense. The only question mark I do have in this game, and where I am terrified, pants-shittingly terrified, is Melvin Gordon is averaging 4.58 yards a carry. And Austin Eckler, I believe, is averaging 5.78 yards a carry. To me, The key to this game is what is Melvin Gordon. If Melvin Gordon shows up and has a day like he did at Wisconsin when Ohio State was holding him to like 28 yards for a game and ruining his Heisman Trophy season, then the Browns are going to be fine. But if Melvin Gordon goes out there and is averaging 4.5 yards a carry and runs for $150, and Austin Eckler's doing his thing, and then Phillip Rivers is going to absolutely eat you for breakfast, and you have no chance. You're not going to be able to blitz because you're just going to be salivating, and they're going to do delayed runs through your blitz, and then you can't blitz. So Phillip Rivers is going to have all day to eat a sandwich, and review the deli that gave him the sandwich on Yelp before throwing a pass. And at that point, osteoporosis and arthritis-ridden Antonio Gates might even get open eventually. So, to me, this whole game where I'm just terrified is what do you do against the run? Because the Browns have been really, really bad against the run. The Ravens are a bad running team, and at times they were gashing you early in that game. You're going up in class against the running backs that you're facing this week. And Greg Williams better have something prepared for the run, and it might start with gap integrity and don't over-pursue the goddamn football.
We're talking
that might help.
Jamie Collins.
That might help. So to me, this game comes down to, can you stop the run? If you can stop the run, Phillip Rivers isn't going to be a problem. Dare I say that he isn't the best quarterback the Browns have faced this year. They faced Ben Roethlisberger, who they made look bad. They faced Drew Brees, who they made look average. The Browns faced two better quarterbacks that they handled. So Phillip Rivers, the Fran Tarkington of his generation, isn't terrifying me. But Melvin Gordon, for some reason, is.
You know what will have the ability to help the Browns against that run game? Now, they haven't declared any of them out yet. 3/5 of the Chargers line was limited in practice. You've got, I'm reading off the computer here, Joe Barksdale, knee injury. Russell Okung, groin injury. Mike Pouncey, their starting center, knee injury.
So maybe there's a pregame speech about hit him early, hit him often, and punch him in the knee on the bottom of the pile. No, I didn't say that. Play clean, Browns. You don't need to Brett Favre these guys.
Well, I just did go back to their last week's game, and they were without Barksdale and Okung in that game. So 2 of the 3 guys that I listed, only their center, Pouncey. So that's your starting left tackle and your starting right tackle that missed last week's game. I don't know about you, but if I'm Myles Garrett and I get to go up against the Chargers' backup tackle, if I'm Emmanuel Ogbah and I'm going up against the backup tackle, I'm excited. You know who's going to be even more excited? Dare I say, Greg Williams, seeing 2 backup tackles out there, might blitz more.
We're going to set a record for the most blitzes. And I mean, is this going to be like Madden where you just call the engage 8 every time?
I mean, it's basically like, what is it? Was that Wedding Crashers? It might as well be a bullseye about the tattoo.
Yep.
So it might as well be a bullseye. If he sees backup tackles on both sides, Greg Williams is going to send the house.
I
don't know. I don't think it's possible for Greg Williams to blitz more than he does already, but he will with 2 backup tackles out.
Can I just say I love it? I'm the guy that screams at every football game on third down. It used to be a running joke. Like my friends who I'd watch the game with, it would be third down. They'd look at me and they go, "What do you do, Scott?" And I'd be like, "For the love of God, blitz! Blitz someone! Blitz everyone! Blitz!" You got to blitz on third down. Nothing agitates me more than on 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 10, watching only 4 guys come on the blitz and drop 7 guys in coverage and give the quarterback all day for someone to get open. Unless you've got like Ohio State's Rushman package that can absolutely just terrorize a quarterback with 4. Nothing agitates me more than not blitzing. So I'm almost never screaming at the TV, "For the love of God, blitz, Greg." It's "For the love of God, on 3rd and 37, please don't blitz 7. But, or can we please have someone cover the middle? The only thing that I'm afraid of in this game is that they find a way to run the football, because the Browns are just, look, I know they're missing 3/5 of their offensive line, possibly, and maybe that's what the Browns need to stop the run. But that's what scares me. And I know that's a legend. That's Phillip Rivers. That's Antonio Gates. But that's not what scares me.
I'm really, really concerned right now. I think this might be the second podcast in a row where you've been way too optimistic.
I started this podcast out by predicting the Browns run away from the Steelers, and what did I say? Like they win 38-10?
I know this is really weird. All right, well, let's go right into there. Let's go into predictions before we close the show with our OBR subscriber questions, because we do have a couple of them. I know I had Lane answer 2 of them for us, so we only have to answer 3. I don't mean only in a bad way, just because we've been talking for an hour and 20 probably at this point. Browns Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers. What's your prediction, Scott?
Boy, I really don't want to do this because when I predicted that they beat the Steelers, I was wrong and they tied. And when I predicted that they would get that win against the Raiders, I was wrong and they lost. Browns win this game 38-31. Some late heroics by Baker Mayfield. And this is absurd. I know this is absurd. This is another game where the Browns build on what they learned last week and outlast the other team. 38-31, Baker Mayfield's mini coming out party, where he absolutely finds ways to torch a defense. It's not that good. Phillip Rivers does Phillip Rivers things. Melvin Gordon runs for $140. The Chargers offense looks great. And in the end, it doesn't matter because it's my mantra. Baker Mayfield changes everything.
Well, letting the feedback go down from your hitting of the table there. No,
You play to win. Oh, wait. What is it? The Chargers are who we thought they were. And we let them off the hook. Let's not have that one.
All right. So my prediction for this one, it's always tough for me because I've always been a closet Phillip Rivers fan, and I'm a Browns fan. And I know what Phillip Rivers can do, and I know what Keenan Allen can do. And I think a lot of them, one of our subscriber questions was, specifically what can we expect from Rivers, and because they don't get to see Phillip Rivers a ton, being on the East Coast, or being us being on the East Coast and Rivers being on the West Coast, and it was a really good question because Rivers plays well, we all know that, but I think Keenan Allen is vastly one of the most underrated receivers in this league, and I think this is going to be Denzel Ward's first big test, and which is crazy because we've faced Michael Thomas, we've faced Antonio Brown, we've faced guys like that already this year. And while Denzel wasn't completely on AB that entire game, he was on Thomas a little bit more, and they both got him up for touchdowns. I think this is going to be a different kind of test because Keenan moves around a lot. Keenan's in the slot. He's on the outside. He's moving around a little bit more. So I'm interested to see how Williams does with that. But anyways, I'll stop talking about all of that. I think it's I think people vastly underrate Keenan Allen. I think the Browns are going to win this one 30-27. And we're going to be screaming about the kicker yet again because it's going to come down to a Greg Joseph field goal if he's still on the team before Sunday, because they've been trying out kickers. I think it's going to come down to another Greg Joseph walk-off winner.
It's one of these crazy things where that happens. Well, please, Greg, make it a little less ugly than last week. Don't have it partially blocked. But we're getting dangerously close to, if they can string a win or two together here, starting to use that P word.
Everybody's been using it in articles that I've been editing on the OBR.
I'm not there yet.
I'm not there yet. We're 2-2-1. We're already way better than I thought we'd be at this point.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's great.
I originally thought 5 wins was good. I'm thinking this is now a 7 to 8 win team potentially. But there's a tough part of the schedule coming. Although that Atlanta Falcons game doesn't look so tough anymore. That one looks right now. You're looking at that one. You're going, we got that one.
If we win this week against the Chargers and go to 3-2-1, heading to a road game against Tampa Bay, this town is going to be thinking that we're going to be 4-2-1 going on the road to Pittsburgh. And if they beat Pittsburgh 5-2-1 for that matchup, are the Chiefs first or the Falcons first? I forget.
Boy, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think.
Could you imagine 5-2-1 going in
against? I think the Falcons are the first game.
Oh my God, 6-2-1 going into. Look how far ahead of ourselves we're getting right now.
Right, but it's just one of those things. Can you imagine like the call in people and everybody calling to the radio stations? So it is. Yeah, I can't find it here.
I'll just say this: if the Browns happen to beat the Steelers to go 5-2-1, Mary Kay Cabot, please do not write an article about the Browns being for real and Baker Mayfield being an elite quarterback. Because the last time you did that, the Browns were like 7-4 and in first place in the division, and then it all fell apart.
It's the Chiefs first, then the Falcons before bye week. So you have the Chargers this week, Tampa Bay, at Pittsburgh, home against Kansas City, home against Atlanta. But with that said, if they find a way to rattle off wins against the Chargers and Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh and move to 5-2-1 heading into that matchup against the Chiefs, that is going to be Mahomes versus Mayfield, battle of the Big 12. Oh my gosh,
Here's
the hype is going to be ridiculous.
What would be what? I gotta back off here for a second. Would the town be more excited about the game against the Chiefs, 5-2-1, than they were for Game 7 of the 2016, 2016 is when they won it. The 2016 NBA Finals.
No, I don't think. I mean, it'll be crazy down there. I'm so happy I bought my season tickets this year. This is going to be fun. Regardless of how these next couple games go, that game is going to be ridiculous.
I have a feeling that this town, if the Browns are like 5-2-1 heading into that game, it will take over everything.
Oh, it'll definitely. I mean,
it'll be like LeBron who?
I don't think it'll be LeBron who, but all right. We've got our predictions in. We both think the Browns are going to win, so hopefully we do get to have a Victory Monday podcast, barring health issues. No, I'm just kidding. I should be good. All right, final section of the podcast here, because we do have some subscriber questions coming in. We'll try and keep the answers to a minimum here because they are some lengthy ones. First one is from Brett. I'm curious about what role Rashard Matthews would play if the team signed him. He seems to me as the same type of player as Jarvis Landry. I've watched a lot of Rashard Matthews because I have family in Tennessee, and so I watch a lot of Titans. He is a slot receiver. He's a possession guy. He can separate at the line. He can make catches. He's a very dependable guy. But you aren't wrong, Brett, in saying that he's a type of player along the Landry realm. Now, with that said, when we had Landry and Higgins, signing Rashard Matthews didn't make too much sense because Landry and Higgins both play inside and out. With Higgins out for a few weeks, you can bring in a guy like Matthews. If you were going to sign him, he can take over that slot role, and then you can push Landry outside like we saw a lot in the preseason and go vertical with him a little bit more. You can move Matthews around. So he's a type of guy. He's a short area guy. He can create some separation with his quick moves off the line and catch passes. He's a very dependable receiver. So that's my take on Matthews. On the other side, Brett's question was, you'll probably cover it, but an assessment of how Rivers is playing this year would be good. He doesn't get a ton of exposure in the East and seems to be under the radar this year. We talked about it. I mean, Rivers is one of the best quarterbacks of our generation. He plays well. He's got that Chargers offense. I believe they're currently the number 2 or number 3 overall offense in the league. He's got him clicking on all cylinders, despite being without Travis Benjamin and with half of his line banged up. So it's pretty much what we have there.
I mean, he's thrown for 1,500 yards. He's protecting the football. I mean, he seems to be in possession of every bit of his formidable skill set and playing as good a football as he's ever played. I mean, he was 22 of 27 last week for 339 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. His lowest quarterback rating this year, I know people don't put much stock into that, is 97.2. The man is having one of those insane late career renaissances. I've said this before. This guy was written off for dead before Brett Favre's second retirement. When Brett Favre was a Jet, Phillip Rivers was written off for dead and old, and he's still getting it done. You can keep writing Phillip Rivers' obituary, and the guy just laughs at you and says, hey, I still have it.
So I'll let you take this next one from Kudra Tab, because we just talked about all of the teams that the Browns are going to be playing here leading up to the bye week. Which player, either offense or defense, will be most difficult for the Browns to handle before the bye? There's some great offensive players on opposing teams that can exploit Greg's defense, and there's some defensive players who can create pressure and make picks. Who's that one player leading up to the bye that you think is going to present the biggest problem for the Browns?
Kareem Hunt.
Really? Interesting.
The Browns just, they have problems against some dynamic players. I could say Julio Jones, because how the hell do you cover Julio Jones? And that was my other statement there. But the Chiefs are just running over everybody, and he's a huge part of it. And I mean, how do you stop that guy? No one's figured out how to stop that guy. He's the most dynamic player in the league at the moment.
So I want to toss one in there, though, to keep an eye on, just because we can box score watch a little bit later. Calvin Ridley has been absolutely torching the middle of the field for the Falcons, and he's been a touchdown monster. So as long as he's healthy for that game, he's somebody to keep an eye on, too, because he'll be running against probably Gaines or the slot corner, Carey or BBC. So he'd be somebody to watch there. All right, next two questions were from Totiji. We covered the right tackle struggling with Lane, and then you ask why the continual bashing by many of Carlos Hyde. We've kind of covered that. We've kind of talked about Carlos Hyde the entire pod, and then also would Chubb be averaging more yards per carry? Scott kind of touched on that. He thought, and so did Lane, with the state of the line, you'd probably see Chubb right around the same yards per carry. This one's from Shrooney. I really like this question. Did the Browns or the Ravens, do anything differently that made Collins and Peppers more effective? Seems to me that they need to do it again if we are going to slow down Rivers and everybody else. So one thing I noticed with Peppers, and because I led the show with my apology to him, is that he seems to be playing more instinctively and not being asked to do things he's uncomfortable with doing, like dropping back 30 yards. So I think what Greg is doing there is he's just letting Jabril go out and be the player that he can be. He's letting him heat seek to the football. He's letting him hit people. He's just letting him do the things that he knows that Jabril can do. And then as the game goes on, he's building more confidence. And then it's allowing him to, feel more confident about making a play in coverage versus just knocking somebody on their ass.
You had a motivated guy in Jabril Peppers last week, but I agree with you. I said it earlier. I think he's a more athletic version of TJ Ward. When you let TJ Ward do the stuff that he does very well, which is play close to the line of scrimmage, be a run stopper, and be disruptive, he was a very effective safety. When you asked him to do things like cover a tight end one-on-one, he looked very bad, and he just did. Jabril Peppers is a guy that when you let him play closer to the line of scrimmage in a traditional strong safety, run-stopping safety, disruptive safety role, he does very well. When you ask him to go play a little bit more of coverage safety, he just doesn't look like he's as good. And that's insane because of the athletic ability he has. You'd think he should be able to do it, and you'd think it would be the other way around. But Jabril is a guy who wants to play. Look, he played linebacker in college for the most part, didn't he?
He was
like that hybrid monster backer. But he made a lot of his plays.
Sometimes
too. But he made a lot of his plays close to the line of scrimmage. That's what he did. So they're using him, they're letting him do that this year. But a lot of it, I think, was just motivation. He was just very motivated in a situation to be successful, and he was. Jamie Collins. No, I don't think they did anything schematically that made Jamie Collins a better player last week. I think Lane has said it. I think, other people have said it. You have someone, Jamie Collins is only 5 years in the league. He's in the league as long as Christian Kirksey. He's 5 or 6 years in. He's a guy coming off an injury. But there are going to be days where Jamie Collins feels well. And he has the ability to be athletic, be explosive, and make plays. It could very well just be that Jamie Collins felt healthy and played at a little bit higher level. And how healthy he feels this week, don't know. It could also be between the years. Jamie Collins, I think, is a guy that some weeks you're going to see him out there and he's just a guy. He's just a guy filling a roster spot on an NFL team. Other weeks you're going to see Jamie out there in the same scheme where he shows glimpses and flashes of the guy he was with the Patriots. And it just depends what week it is, week in and week out. And I just think he's that guy. Every player has a range in everything. Everyone has a range. And right now, his range is average to a little bit above average. And I think it just depends how he feels that day and where his mindset is.
Well, on that note, that's all we have for you. We're finally done. We're finally done talking. But before I let us go, big thank you to Lane, as always, for joining the podcast. Big thank you and shout out to the OBR subscribers for dropping your questions over in the tap room. OBR subscribers, I will always start one of these threads. I'll try and put it up Monday, early Monday, so that way you can get your questions in and we'll answer them in our, Ask the Straight Talk people. That's all I got right now for you. I'm exhausted. At the end of the podcast for you. And then we'll always try and ask Lane a couple of them while we have him, but we try not to keep him for 30, 40 minutes. So on that note, got to sign off the same way. Let's have another Victory Monday. Well, it's Wednesday this week, but go Browns.
Go Browns.
In 3 games, I haven't seen a loss yet.
Everything is good. How are you guys doing tonight?